Hey, what's up? It's a Figure Hunter, and today we're going to do a review of the Bear Grips wrist wrap options. Now, this one is not Bear Grips. This is actually the Double Under Wonder that I featured in a video a little while ago. But I have been testing and trying two different versions of the Bear Grips wrist wraps. And we're going to talk about what I think the features, benefits, and which one I think is actually worth the money and one that you should actually consider in your lineup. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. We've got a best of 22 CrossFit watch review coming up, as well as a full in-depth analysis of Garmin's training readiness. So stay tuned for more. So I was using the Double Under Wonder simple sort of thumb hook stretchy elastic, 14-inch approximately wrist wraps, and that's just what I've used for a long period of time, and they actually did the job for the most part until a company reached out and said that it'd be worth it to try a couple of their options. Now, when you look at the wrist wrap market, there are a number of different styles of wrist wraps. There are some where you hold a little string and you wrap it around and you tuck the little string in, and that sort of stays static at the level of amount of rigidity in the wrist for that period of time, because you're not like pulling the string out and readjusting it every time. There's some where you just actually hold it and you Velcro it around your wrist at a sort of a medium level tension because you can't get it quite as tight. And then there are these where you have your thumb that can hook in and you can yank it as hard as you want and wrap it around to make it super tight if you're going heavy on overhead squats or snatches, or if you want to make it more moderate, you can loosen it up, or you can lift heavy, break the seal, loosen it, and then rewrap before the next big lift. So these are the ones that you have the thumb hook around, and they are two different versions. So the Bear Grips offers two different lengths of wrist wraps. This is the 12-inch, so you can see it there, and then they have the 18-inch, which you can see here, and they're two different levels of tautness. I think that's the word. So this one is actually a little bit tight. There's obviously less bandwidth for it to be able to have elasticity. There's less space. And you can compare it to the 14-inch Double Under Wonder that I have here, and they all roll up nice and put in your bag, and which has a little more stretch because it's just got more overall length to it to have more flexibility. So when I tested the 12-inch with less elasticity, now this is the standard strength, because on their website, we'll look at the website in just a second just to give you a quick overview, there's extra strength, which has less elasticity, more overall just strength throughout it. It basically is more of a rigid but still tight wrap around your wrist for heavy lifts, and that's probably better for powerlifting. And there's standard strength, which has more elasticity, which gives you flexibility and movement, more mobility, and in the workouts themselves or in the actual wrap. So if you see, just in simple terms, if we just sort of look at the wrist wraps, how it goes on the wrist, and we'll look at it up close in a second. So this is the 12-inch, less room for elasticity, so you can see you can wrap it one time around, and that's about all you've got. So you can still get it a little bit tight, but the elasticity is only so much, and so you can't quite use elasticity and the physics of elasticity to benefit a tighter fit. So now if you go with a mid-level or a mid-length 14-inch with elasticity and the same, you still get a little bit more. I can feel a little bit more tightness around my wrist because I had a little bit more fabric to wrap around, and you still have some flexibility and mobility there because these are all three really the elastic model. So I have not looked at the extra strength, and I actually, and just tell you before I get to even the summary, that I don't think that's necessarily as useful for CrossFit, because we're not just looking for a 450-pound bench press. We're really looking for mobility coupled with it. But see, now if you have an 18-inch, you just get multiple times around the wrist, and so you can catch it once, and then you sort of tighten the last little bit, and you can change the actual tightness of the wrist. And I'll show you in a second how you can actually adjust what areas of your wrist you could cover or could try to cover, because you just have that much more fabric. So the extra length and elasticity along with it allows you to have a little bit tighter hold on how tight it is around your wrist, but also the extra length gives you the ability to focus on different parts of the wrist and providing support. So with that, let's look at the website. We'll look at these just sort of hands-on briefly and then talk about them in summary.
All right, so if you ever do a search for best wrist wraps in general, you can see there's a lot of options on the market. So in the sort of in this row here, on the left, you have the Rogue. That's actually the one where you like wrap it around and then you stick a little string on the inside. I'm personally not a fan of that because it just seems too problematic. The Jerk Fit in the middle here now, it combines, hand wraps with a wrist wrap combination. I think it's better to have it separate, and those are a little expensive. Then you can see, some of the name brands on the Tupood, if I'm even saying that correctly, the Alico, $24. There's just a lot of options. I think the simple answer is just getting something that you like and sticking with it. There's the Rogue wrist wraps for 24-inch. These are pretty much the standard when it comes to what you would typically see, but they do not have a thumb sleeve. This just basically wraps around and Velcro's closed. So when you go to the Bear Grip site, you'll see that these style uses the thumb catch to help wrap it around, as I showed in the video before. They have two different options. They have standard strength here in the middle. You can choose extra strength, and that's where they say that there's 4 bands of strength versus 2 bands of strength. And in the middle here, you can select between 18 inches and 12 inches. I showed you the 12 versus the 18. Now, in simple terms, the standard strength has more elasticity, more mobility, more flexibility, and the extra strength is more rigid, but it's supposed to provide more overall, help with heavy lifts. So you can see it here on the left. Standard strength is max mobility, but just standard raw power through the wrist, and the extra strength is lower on the mobility, but maximum on the power through the wrist. So, they have a few basic sizes. This is on their website. So if you're going to 18 inches on the standard strength, which is what I think would make the most sense, for CrossFit, for flexibility, you're looking at $20. And then if you look at Amazon, you get the same thing. It just happens to be $18. And it's probably a little bit easier to order, and maybe even will get to you more quickly. So, hey, you just want to look in the middle here, this little tiny radio button where you can choose between 12 and 18. I have the 18 selected. You can see in the middle above the little tiny icons where you see it pictured, there's a few of extra strength, and they're all like $18. So you're not missing out on anything there. There's extra strength black. I tend to just keep it simple. There's the ones I have. There they are in black, but here they are in red again, and again at 18 inches for $18. So that's probably the best deal there.
All right, so this might not be the most useful way to see it, but here they are wrapped up. You can tell in just simple terms, $20 wrist wraps, and basically 20 on each of these. If you buy them on Amazon, they're 18. So you can see the overall design, and we'll take some and look at some that are broken down. So this is the Double Under Wonder that I have been using. It looks like it is 12 inches, and it is pretty stretchy. And so when I first tested the Bear Grips 12-inch one, it actually, look at that, it's 14 on the Double Under. The Bear Grips doesn't have as much stretch. There's just not as much stretch elastic space bandwidth to make it possible. And then you go to the full Bear Grips 18-inch, and you just got a lot of space. So when you go to put this on, you have the ability to tighten the bandwidth across the wrist. This is what it looks like when it's on. This is pretty heavily tightened right now. You could even move it further up the back of the wrist like this, which is typically what I do when I snatch because I've got a bum left wrist. So the amount of fabric, literally the length of fabric that is provided on the 18-inch coupled with the extensive stretchiness of the 18-inch bands just gives you a lot more flexibility to change the dynamics of how much overall surface area you can cover on your wrist to provide overall flex against the backdrop there if you've got a bum wrist like I do, and overall just to provide support. So because it's so long and it's so stretchy, I'm getting full support here, but it's also able to cover territory up the back of the hand. Okay, so what do I think in summary? I think all these provide support and they're all sort of the same elasticity. I do think having a style with the thumb hook, which gives you the ability to adjust and it doesn't have to be redone in detail. So you can go more tight for the heavier lifts and then you can loosen it up when you're on a break. If you're in like an, every 2.5 minutes you're doing a heavier lift and then giving yourself time, you can just get some breathing room in your wrist and then retighten down. And if you're looking at these options, I think the longer the better. Obviously, I don't think you'd want to look at longer but extra strength, like that sort of really firm, less flexible type of hand wrap wrist wrap that we saw on the website, because I think even in just using their 12-inch, which just doesn't have the same elasticity, the fabric just isn't as elastic, at least in this particular version. It just felt stiff on the wrist. So if I was doing a single like bench press or something like that, maybe that would sort of create more power through the wrist for that one lift. But in CrossFit, there's so many dynamic lifts, and even as we're getting closer to PRs or we're doing it at 90% for 2 or 3 reps, so we're carrying a lot of weight, there needs to be elasticity. And then the last point I would make is that elasticity and length are your friend, because it gives you a broader range of how you adjust the wrist wraps around your wrist. So you have all this bandwidth, and so you can get it on. What I typically would do is just get it on there at a certain level and then re-wrap my hand when I go to lift. So now I'm wrapping it really tight and really tight to be able to get it ready for the next lift. So you can wrap it further up your wrist. You can just keep it focused on the wrist itself, depending on what your wrist strength needs or your wrist support needs. So as I've had a bum wrist, I've really wrapped it really high up when going to overhead squats or squat snatches, and that has really helped provide a lot of comfort. If we are doing bench press, I can just focus on wrapping the wrist, and the extra fabric or extra length, it's not like it's creating any more problems just because it's extra thick around the wrist versus what a shorter length would provide. Oh, and one recommendation I forgot, I would interject this in the middle, is you should look at buying 2 sets. In my opinion, with the level of sweat that happens in a typical CrossFit workout with a heavy Metcon, if you're wearing this throughout a long period of time, they get really sweaty. So if you can go with the affordable option at like $18 for a set of 2 that are 18 inches and have all the elasticity, flexibility you want, you get 2 of those for $36. It's still a reasonable, and then you can rotate them through, maybe go with a couple different colors, rotate them through so that you basically aren't using a sweaty wrist wrap every time you go to wrap up the next day. So with that is the review of the Bear grips, both on the 12-inch and the 18-inch on the standard strength models. All the links to look at it on Amazon, like we looked at it on part of this video, are down below. So it's the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.